When I was 24, I thought a man who remembered my birthday without being reminded was doing something exceptional. I genuinely thought that. I remember telling a friend, he always remembers, as though this was the evidence of something. I am not laughing at the woman I was at 24. She was doing the best she could with the information she had. But I think about her sometimes when women come to me now, at my age, and talk about what they are willing to accept in a relationship. And I notice how different the conversation is. Not harder, not sadder, just different, more specific, more clear. The bare minimum at 64 looks nothing like it did at 24. And I think that is worth talking about directly, not as a criticism of the women we were, not as a performance of hard-won wisdom, but because the shift is real, and because nobody tells you it is coming, and because a lot of women in the middle of it, women who are in their 50s or 60s, and finding themselves reevaluating what they need from the people in their lives, feel vaguely ashamed of it, as though wanting more is a sign of having become difficult, as though clarity is the same thing as bitterness. It is not. That is what this conversation is about. There is a woman I know named Rose. She is 64 years old. She has been married twice. The first marriage lasted 11 years. The second lasted 7. She has been on her own for the past 6 years. And she has been in a relationship for the last 2, a different kind of relationship than the one she had before, with a different kind of man, built on different terms. And what she told me about what she requires now, compared to what she accepted then, is one of the clearest articulations of this shift I have ever heard. She said, at 24, I needed someone to choose me. That was the whole thing. Just choose me, want me, stay. And I was willing to arrange almost everything else around that. She paused for a moment. She said, I don't need to be chosen now. I need to be respected. I need to be heard. I need someone whose presence in my life actually makes my life better. Not just fuller, not just less quiet, but genuinely, specifically better. And those are not the same list. They are not the same list. That is the thing I keep coming back to. Because at 24, being chosen feels like the whole answer. Someone wants you. Someone stayed. That felt like enough, more than enough, because the alternative felt so uncertain. You were afraid of being left. And that fear organized everything else. At 64, Rose is not afraid of being left. She has already left. She has already been through the endings, the slow ones and the sudden ones, and she has built something on the other side. The fear that used to govern her choices no longer governs them. And what takes its place is not numbness or indifference. What takes its place is something clearer, something that knows the difference between a relationship that makes her life bigger and a relationship that makes her life smaller. That knowing, that quiet, accumulated, hard-earned knowing is what changes the list. Here is what the bare minimum looks like at 24. In my experience, not as a judgment, but as an honest description of what most of us were working with. Consistency, basic consistency. He calls when he says he will. He shows up when he says he will. He does not disappear for weeks without explanation. He is not actively unkind. He makes you feel, on balance, more wanted than not. That is not nothing. I want to be clear about that. After whatever the alternative was, the inconsistency, the not calling, the disappearing consistency felt like something to be grateful for. And we were grateful for it. Loudly and sincerely grateful. in the way you are grateful for warmth after you have been cold. The problem is not that we were grateful. The problem is that we confused being grateful with having enough. And those are not the same thing either. Gratitude is what you feel when you have been given something you needed. Sufficiency is when what you have actually meets the full need. We collapse those two things into each other. We said, I am grateful, therefore this is enough. And we built years, in some cases decades, on that confusion. There is nothing wrong with the woman who did that. She was 24. She had not yet had enough time with herself, enough experience of her own preferences and her own boundaries, enough clarity about what she actually needed from another person to know what the full list looked like. So she worked with what she had. She asked for consistency, and when she got it, she called it love. What changes between 24 and 64 is not your standards in the sense of raising some arbitrary bar. It is that the bar becomes specific. You stop dealing in categories and start dealing in particulars. At 24, you might say, I want someone who is kind. At 64, you know what kind looks like in the specific situations that matter. You know that kind is easy when things are easy. You know that what you are actually looking for is how someone behaves when they are tired, or when you are sick, or when there is money pressure, or when they do not get what they want. You have been in enough situations by now to know that the version of a person in ordinary circumstances is not the same as the version of that person under pressure. And you have learned the hard way to look at the second version. Rose said, I used to interview for the role. I would see how someone behaved at dinner and on weekends, and when they were trying to impress me. And I took that as my data. I didn't understand that I needed to see them when they were inconvenienced, when they were wrong and they knew it, when I needed something they didn't feel like giving. That's where the character is. You can't see it in the audition. She is right. You cannot see it in the audition. And at 24, most of us had not yet figured out that there was a difference between the audition and the actual role. We cast people based on their best performance and then lived with their everyday one. At 64, you have seen enough everyday performances to know what you are actually evaluating. You are not dazzled by the audition anymore. You have seen what happens after. Here is what the bare minimum looks like at 64. Not a complete list. Every woman's list is her own because it is built from the specific education of her specific life. But these are the things that come up most consistently in the conversations I have. Someone who tells you the truth, not a romantic thing, a basic thing. You have been lied to or misled or managed. You know what it costs. You know how hard it is to rebuild yourself after you have organized your life around a version of events that was not accurate. You know the particular exhaustion of discovering, months or years later, that the story you were told was not the story. You will not do it again, not because you are bitter, but because you have done the maths, you know the price, and you are no longer willing to pay it. Someone who knows how to apologize and actually does. Not the deflection that wears the shape of an apology, the I'm sorry you feel that way, the I'm sorry but, an actual acknowledgement that something happened, that it had an impact, and that the person in front of you is capable of sitting in that without immediately reframing it as your fault or their misfortune. This sounds like a low bar. It is not. Most people cannot do it. Most people who cannot do it have never been required to learn. Someone whose life has room in it for yours. This one is harder to articulate, but Rose described it clearly. She said, in both my marriages, I expanded to fill whatever space was left after his life was arranged. His work, his interests, his family, his moods, I worked around all of it. And then whatever was left over, whatever margin existed after his life had been accommodated, that was my life. I will not do that again. I need someone who is genuinely interested in my life. Not performed interest, not polite inquiries at dinner, but actual curiosity about what I think and what I want and what I am doing. And who has built their own life well enough that they are not asking me to hold it up. Presence, not physical presence, actual attention. You have sat across from people who were there and not there simultaneously. You know the difference between being in the room with someone and being with someone. You have given up asking for one when you were only ever going to receive the other. You know what it feels like to speak and not be heard, to share something and watch it land nowhere, to be with someone who is somewhere else entirely, and to understand eventually that you cannot reach them because they were never quite in the room with you. You will not do that again. Not because you are closed, because you know what it costs to stay too long in a room where no one is listening. I want to say something about the accusation because it comes with this territory. When women at 60 describe what they require in relationships, when they articulate clearly what they will and will not accept, there is often an accusation that follows, spoken or implied, that they are asking for too much, that their standards are too high, that they have priced themselves out of the market through their own excessive expectations. I want to look at that accusation directly. Rose looked at it directly. She said, I was told at various points in my life that I was too much, too sensitive, too particular, too difficult. And every time I heard it, I made myself smaller. I accommodated. I lowered what I was asking for. I bent myself into a shape that was easier for someone else to manage. And do you know what I got in return? The relationships I got in return. The ones that produced 11 years, and then 7 years, and then 6 years of learning what I should have known from the start. So when someone tells me now that I'm asking for too much, I think I have tried asking for less. I know exactly what that produces. I am not going back. I think about this a great deal. The accusation that a woman has too high standards always assumes that the standards themselves are the problem. It never questions whether the people failing to meet them are the problem. It never considers that perhaps the woman's clarity is not a flaw, but a product of experience, hard experience, real experience, the kind that leaves you knowing exactly what you need and exactly what you will not survive again. Asking for less did not protect Rose. It did not make her relationships more successful. It made her smaller. And when she finally stopped making herself smaller, she found someone who did not need her to be. That is not a coincidence. There is a kind of clarity that comes at 64 that was not available at 24. It is not a comfortable clarity. It has been earned through things you would not have chosen. But it is yours, and it is real, and it is one of the things that nobody tells you to expect when you are young and organizing your life around being chosen. Rose has it. She describes her relationship now with a matter-of-factness that is almost startling, not the breathless quality of early love, not the performance of contentment, but the quiet, grounded sense of someone who knows exactly what she has and why she values it. She said, "He is not perfect. Neither am I. We have disagreements. We have had hard conversations. But he shows up for them. He does not disappear or deflect or make me feel responsible for his discomfort. When something is wrong, we talk about it like two adults who respect each other. And I had to be 62 years old before I understood that this was not a high bar. This was the baseline. This was what I should have been starting from 40 years ago. She should have been starting from it. Most of us should have been. And the fact that we were not is not a failure of character. It is a failure of information. We did not know what we did not know. We confused gratitude for sufficiency. We confused being chosen for being seen. We confused staying with loving. We confused someone needing us for someone valuing us. We know better now. That is not a small thing. That is what 64 years of living looks like when you choose to learn from it rather than simply survive it. There is one more thing I want to say, and it is this. The list does not make you difficult. The list makes you honest. There is a difference between a woman who cannot be pleased and a woman who knows what she needs. The first is impossible to satisfy because nothing is ever enough. The second knows exactly what enough looks like, and she knows it because she has lived long enough to understand her own life. Rose is not impossible to please. She is pleased genuinely, quietly pleased in the relationship she is in now, not because it is perfect, because it is real, and because the person she is with meets the things that actually matter to her. That is what the list is for. Not to protect yourself from everyone. To know clearly what you are looking for when the right person is standing in front of you. If you are somewhere in your own version of this, navigating what you are willing to accept now, at whatever age you are, having accumulated whatever it is your life has taught you, I want you to sit with one question. Not, am I asking for too much? That question has been used against you long enough. This question, what have I learned from my own life about what I actually need? Not what I was told I should want. Not what would make things easier. Not what would keep the peace or avoid the conversation. What I have learned in my own body and my own history about what it takes for me to feel genuinely seen, genuinely respected, genuinely valued in a relationship. That knowledge is yours. You earned it. It is not a list of demands. It is an education, and you are allowed to use it. My name is Patricia Hayes. This is Patricia's Porch. I am here every week because I believe that the conversations women have with each other about their real lives are among the most valuable conversations available to us. If today gave you something, share it with a woman who is working out what she is willing to accept. And subscribe below. I would love to keep this conversation going with you. Thank you. I will see you next time.